Hello, and welcome to AACSB Explores. My name is Tom Robinson, and I am the President and CEO of AACSB International. Joining me today is Enase Okonedo, Dean of the Lagos Business School at the Pan Atlantic University located in Nigeria. Dean Okonedo and myself will discuss management education in Africa, as well as other emerging markets, along a few major themes, namely new developments and major initiatives occurring within Lagos Business School, challenges and opportunities unique to the African management education context, the value of collaboration with schools in emerging markets, and the future of management education, in particular to Africa and other emerging markets. Let's begin with a brief background about how you became Dean of Lagos Business School.
Okay, well, I joined the Lagos Business School in 1995 from the banking industry. I'd worked in the bank for 8 years. I was bored. I was looking for something different. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I thought an MBA would broaden my horizon. And so I took on a 1 year temporary job at the Lagos Business School as a research associate whilst waiting to go for my MBA studies. After 6 months of being at the school, oh, by the way, when I applied for the position, I was told I was overqualified. They were looking for fresh people out of school, and I'd been working for 8 years, and I was a professional accountant. Nevertheless, I persuaded them and I became a research associate. And 6 months after, the Lagos Business School started in 91. 6 months after I joined, a vacancy arose in the finance faculty. And surprise, surprise, they asked me if I was interested. Well, recall that I was bored looking for something else to do, had no idea what I was going to do, but thought that MBA would broaden my horizon. So I joined as a faculty member. And a few months after I joined, well, I was informed by the time I was joining that there was no need for me to go away because the Lagos Business School was going to begin an MBA program. I had a family, so it was an attractive proposition. So I could remain in Nigeria, do my MBA program, and I had a job because I'd quit my old job. And so I joined as a young faculty member, doing very little teaching at first. But then in the course of the year, there were various administrative responsibilities that faculty members had to take. So I had a few assigned to me, and I went on to hold different administrative positions at the school while still remaining a faculty member. So I was MBA director for a few years. I was director of academic programs. I was director of faculty of degree programs and so on. So in the period before I became dean, I had not only been teaching, but I'd been actively involved in administration. I had become a member of the management board of the school 5 years before I became dean. So I was conversant with, if you like, not only the academic, but also the administrative parts there. And that's how I became dean.
Yeah, and in addition, you had the practice experience, which is
Absolutely.
great to bring that experience to the students.
Yes, and then it did help as well because at Lagos Business School, faculty must consult. It's not an option. So you're required to consult, and we actively seek for consulting opportunities for faculty just so that they can remain in touch with what's going on and they're bringing the practical experience back into the classroom.
Yeah, that's an interesting model.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned Lagos Business School was opened in 1991.
Yes, it was.
Initially, I believe it was the Center for Professional Communications and was offering management courses relevant to the Nigerian business environment. A lot has evolved at LBS since then. Can you share the major milestones over the last 24 years for the business school?
Yes, indeed. We started off as the Center for Professional Communications, and we were doing short seminars. My colleagues sometimes, when they think back to how we began and what we were doing, they consider it a miracle that people were coming. But obviously, it was well received, and it met the needs of the industry because at the time, there wasn't any management development institution in Nigeria for the private sector. There existed one or two for the public sector, but with managers whose organizations wanted to develop, they had to go out of the country. And so Lagos Business School saw this opportunity at about the time, just some background, at about the time that Lagos Business School came into existence, we had gone through a structural adjustment program in Nigeria. There was a huge depreciation of the currency. And so companies who previously would send their managers abroad now cost them 10 times as much to obtain the same training. And therefore, there had been a reduction in the development of managers. And so the Lagos Business School came in at the time this was happening. About a year after we started with the short seminars, we decided to launch a chief executive program, which it still remains our flagship program and is the topmost executive program that we have, targeted at chief executives. And the primary objective was that we firmly believe that good leadership engenders good followership. Therefore, we thought if we could get the managers to buy into what it was that we were trying to propagate, not only the knowledge in terms of the expertise across various functional areas, but from the very beginning, we'd always laid a very strong emphasis on business ethics, which was especially important in the context in which we were operating. And we thought that if we were going to have any impact at all on society, better to start from the top where they could make things happen. So in 1992, we launched a chief executive program. In 1993, we launched 2 more executive programs. And then we went on launching executive programs. So now we have, I would say, a complete array of executive programs. And in year 2001, we launched an owner management program targeted at managers who owned their businesses as well. Now, because we began with the chief executive program, we were able to slowly begin to make an impact on business practices. Because here we were coming with something that was different, something that was refreshing. It was in theory. From the beginning, main pedagogy has been a case study method, a case methodology. Therefore, people could, if you like, run with the things that they were getting from the school and started to influence others within the organization. Something that I think was also critical as well was that in 1993, a year after we launched the Chief Executive Program, we launched our Alumni Association. And today we have over 5,000 professionals, 5,400 to be precise, that belong to the Alumni Association. In Nigeria, it's considered to be one of the most prestigious professional networks to belong to. And I think that the whole idea of people aspiring to belong to this network obviously has helped the Lagos Business School to go where it has. A lot of things have helped us to grow very fast. I think that a period in which we witnessed tremendous growth was after we decided to enter into the Financial Times of London ranking. And after we did that, there was almost an exponential growth in terms of participants onto our degree programs. When we started the school, as I mentioned when speaking about my background, we were doing an MBA program with the support of ESA Business School. So we will prepare the students in Nigeria, and then ESA Business School will take charge and then give the degree. But we'd always aspire to become a university. And in 2002, we were one of the first that were granted a license to become a private university. That brought a lot of things, which I think were also quite beneficial in what the Lagos Business School is today. When we became a university, our focus had to change slightly. We started as a teaching institution, using practitioners from industry mainly. As a university, we had to have academics. Those of us who had been hired from industry and didn't have doctorates were encouraged, cajoled, threatened, persuaded to go and acquire academic degrees. And then began a foray into research. And I would say that we tackled it headlong, and increasingly over the years, we've had faculty members winning prizes for best papers at conferences, best case studies coming out of emerging markets, and so on and so forth. That was another major achievement for us. And then only about 5 years ago, we broadened our outlook to focus on developing managers for Africa. And that was another significant step in the history of Lagos Business School, because it affected not only the content of what it is that we offered, but also the structure of the programs that we offered, as well as our research interests. In the main, I think that those are the significant things that have happened that have made the Lagos Business School what it is today.
Yeah, so it sounds, again, the business school came out of a connection to practice and need to train managers where there was a void. Today, how important is it also for Lagos Business School to train those in government or NGOs or not-for-profit enterprises?
Extremely important. I must say that we didn't always consider it extremely important. When we started, our focus was on developing managers for the private sector. It took us a long time to come to the realization, but I would say 17 years after, we came to the realization that we were developing managers that operated in a sphere that was controlled by officials and persons from the public sector who perhaps were not very conversant of the effects of policies that they crafted on business owners as well as businesses there. Also, we're trying to change the mindset of people. As you know, we have issues with unethical business practices in several parts, several regions of the world that are emerging, also in developed markets, if I may, but more so in developed markets as well. And from the very beginning, we had intended to propagate this idea of you can do business the right way. So we had private sector managers who came and we told, you know what, stick to your guns, go out there, do things the right way. But the challenges of operating in the sphere, as I mentioned, controlled by people who didn't think the same,
Right.
didn't realize the ills that those things did to society, made it very difficult for them to practice all they had been taught. And for those principal reasons, we decided that, you know what, let's start to do things for the public sector. So we launched a public sector initiative 4 years ago, and I must say it's been well received there. So we do customs programs for the private sectors. We still do not see the numbers. We are very creative in the way we go about doing things. We've offered scholarship to legislators in the past, to heads of key parastatals to come on executive programs as well, just so that they can come, because we have a missional imperative that we think it's critical for them to be involved in this process. So the development of public managers, I don't think that it's something that can be ignored, especially in emerging climes, because of the importance to the sustainability of businesses.
Great. Are there other major initiatives you're currently working on that'll help continue to make you a major player in Africa and globally?
Well, there's some that we're working on last year, also with the realization that we needed to develop managers for Africa. Why did we come to that realization? We were very Nigerian-centric at the time we began, understandably so, in the circumstances that I described, and also because, given our population, there is a huge need for managers in Nigeria. But perhaps in the last 8 years or so, following the recession in more developed markets and the renewed interest, or the new interest, not renewed, in emerging markets and looking at areas of growth, we've seen a huge influx of multinational companies moving into Africa in pursuit of growth for the businesses. Of course, all this is fueled by the economic growth potential coming out of Africa. Nigeria is the biggest market. So that is something we've observed over the last 8 years in the wake of declining growth in other regions and projections for Africa and Asia being the major growth regions. The second reason was that about the same period as well, we started seeing the expansion of previously domestic companies across the continent. So we had telecommunications companies created in Southern Africa who were moving across the continent. We had financial services industries or companies originated in Nigeria moving across the continent. Now, those two major trends that we observed woke us up to the realization that the manager that will be developing at Lagos Business School would not necessarily be someone who will spend the rest of his life working in Nigeria. He could pretty much find himself working across the continent. Because even though all these organizations are looking at in pursuit of growth, the critical question remains, who are the managers that will help to actualize this growth? Now, with that realization, we then knew that we had to develop managers not only for Nigeria but for Africa. One of the major initiatives that we launched is an executive program that's called the International Management Program for Executives in Africa, targeted at these two companies that I've described, these two groups of companies that I've described, for executives who are expected to play a leading role in leading companies across the continent. It requires a different level of sophistication. There are cultural nuances that they have to be attuned to. There is the knowledge of global trends and practices in doing business as well. So we launched that program 2 years ago, and we attract people from all over Africa, especially from multinational companies, on this program. And the program is run in Nigeria, in South Africa, and in Singapore. And the reason why we choose Singapore is that, at least in Nigeria, we have a great admiration of the transformation of Singapore over the last 40, 50 years as well, coming from basically the same history as we have.
Yeah, that's great. I think the comparison to Singapore is interesting in that Singapore has come a long way in 50 years, but it has a very small landmass.
Mhm.
Africa, on the other hand, has a large landmass in the population. So it's interesting to imagine where Africa is going to be
Absolutely.
in the next 50 years.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you too.